I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julia McKenzie.
Part of the game.
CJ, buddy, for the second time in the history of our show, we get to do a show in person.
I'm
excited.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
And we're doing it in the house that Julia McKenzie built.
I mean, I don't think I built this house.
I was walking around campus looking for the statue.
Well, it's funny you say that because, for context for everyone watching on YouTube on the SDPN channel, we are doing this from a recording studio at Concordia University's journalism program, journalism school, and the name of the building on the Loyola campus for the journalism program is the CJ building for communications and journalism. So technically, we're actually in the house that CJ built.
I love that. Love that energy. And I'm glad as a Ryerson University journalism graduate that I didn't I'm glad that I didn't burst into flames when I walked in the building. You know,
I don't know if we're able to track this or not, but so CJ just laughed right now because the guy who's producing the show, my good buddy AJ Cordero, just booed loudly when CJ mentioned he was a Ryerson student. I think it's called X University now. Yeah, it's called X University. It's not even called Ryerson anymore. Right. Well, all that to say, you're not getting a lot. I didn't realize. I don't even think there's any rivalry between Concordia and Ryerson. We're too busy dealing with McGill anyway.
Yeah, there was no rivalry when I was there. I mean, maybe with Carleton a little bit, but I don't know. I think rivalries are stupid. There's enough
Really?
Well, because there's enough energy, there's enough abundance in the world for everyone. You know what I mean? It's not like if you get this, then the other person can't get that. And so anyway.
You're such a person filled with love, man.
But I'm just saying, you can go to this school or that school and still end up in the same place. Because we're here together. We're working together.
That's true.
We're doing our thing.
That's true.
And we came from different spots. And so, that's how it works.
Shout out CJ for being such a humanitarian. Just being nice. Now we have to talk about people losing their jobs. It's kind of a bit of a hard segue, but that's essentially what's been happening.
That's going to be a theme today.
It's basically going to be a theme today with two franchises, the Vancouver Canucks and the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll start with the Canucks first because there's a lot to unpack from there, and then we'll get to Alain Vigneault and the Flyers and everyone else who lost their jobs there off of them being relieved of their duties. But the Canucks, just to kind of recap for everybody, GM Jim Benning out of a job, his AGM also relieved of his duties, and head coach Travis Green now replaced by Bruce Boudreau. Before we get into all the nitty-gritty stuff with it, I know you got into Montreal on noon on Sunday, and all of that news was kind of unfolding late in the night. What was it like for you just trying to get a sense of everything that was happening with the Vancouver Canucks on Sunday?
Well, look, no one's surprised by this. You know what I mean? I feel like we've been waiting for these kind of shoes to drop. And the longer it went on, it did point to me that you were going to get a full house cleaning because, if the GM had the ability to hire a new head coach, you probably would have already done it. And, certainly there was interest at one point with Jim Benning and Claude Julien potentially going in there. Anyway, since that didn't happen, it pointed to a larger sweeping change. And it was a busy night, chasing after everything. It's going to be this is reality TV now, that organization. I mean, I hate to say that.
It is.
But, I can't think of too many circumstances where an owner hires the head coach, and that's what's happened here, right? Mm-hmm. Whoever now comes in to run the hockey ops department, and, we'll get into this, I'm sure, it might not necessarily just be a GM. There might be a president. I think that they have an open mind about how they're going to approach these openings. But, they've now just inherited a head coach. And granted, look, you got a 2-year deal, so it's not a long-term contract. Bruce Boudreau, it's pretty clear what he is, but you're trying to plug holes wherever you can, I guess. And look, I'm not being critical of the decision. I think everyone there had to be looking over their heads.
Right.
The players, the coaching staff knew this was possible, and even Jim Benning, he had a press conference a few weeks ago and said he didn't know about his own job. So I actually think this is healthy that it's happened, but where they go from here is going to be really interesting.
Well, the first piece of news, to try to at least get a little bit of a sense of the timeline of how some of the news kind of dropped. The first thing that came out, your boy Elliott let everybody know that Elliot Friedman is who I'm referencing, of course.
Elliot doesn't need two names on this show.
That's true. We can call him Elliot.
Our people know for each.
I hope so. He made mention of the fact that Bruce Boudreau was going to replace Travis Green. I always just think for stuff like that, it's just super weird when a team isn't even able to get out the fact that they're going to fire a guy and they're already announcing their replacement. Like, I can't imagine Travis Green. I don't know how he would have heard about the news of him being let go, but I can't imagine him feeling too good after essentially the news goes out that your replacement has already been found.
Yeah, I don't know for sure though that he didn't know at that point, just because it wasn't announced in an orderly fashion. I don't want to suggest that that's the case. Look, when you get fired, you never want to hear it.
No.
I remember Brian Burke used to say, like, when he had tough news to give, he said he always gave it in like one sentence, because he's like, if you give a long explanation, all the person's going to hear is you just got traded to Calgary. And then you're not going to hear all the nice things he said afterwards because you're processing that really big piece of info. And so I don't think that you would certainly, I think the reason teams want to control news isn't even just from like it getting out. It's because you want to communicate it privately before it's in the public sphere. And so let's hope that didn't happen. I actually don't know in this case.
I don't know either, but I could just imagine. I guess I more or less imagine that being the case, but I don't know for sure either.
Well, people find out they've been traded on Twitter.
Yes.
That it's not uncommon, I guess, but it's a tricky part of today's media world, to be honest. Like, I'm trying to remember the circumstances. Nazem Kadri, I remember saying that when he got traded from Toronto, he had sort of he wished that there was more of a chance for like a face-to-face meeting or something. But I think the reality is, like, literally there's a trade call that happens.
Yeah.
You have to get both teams and the league and the legal lawyers on the phone and then it's in the world. And like there's I guess you just don't have the time maybe to do it in the most humane way possible all the time. And so, look, it's a tough business. Like, I think that's the part, today's show, we're talking about a lot of people who lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And those people have partners and potentially children, and like those losses are felt through a family. Everyone still gets paid for what's on their contracts, but it's still not a good day in a lot of people's houses, or a good night last night. And so let's not lose sight of that either.
That's the nicest way I've heard anyone put this whole thing, and I know this applies to the Philadelphia Flyers as well, because if you talk to fans in Vancouver over what they've been feeling over their team over the last how many years, this is a long time coming for this franchise. This is a team that obviously they're not off to a good start right now. A fan threw a jersey on the ice over the weekend. There are a lot of people who...
I think there's been a few, actually, over the last few weeks.
Well, yeah. So we can mention the Canadians as well, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, funny enough, I completely forgot about the fact that a Leafs jersey was thrown onto the ice this season. This wasn't from some mirage from another year or anything like that.
Early on.
It did. It's so funny how we completely forgot about that. But there are fans in Vancouver who have just been so fed up with the management structure in place that they probably wouldn't even think, like, oh, yeah, right. Like, Jim Benning and Travis Green are human beings at the end of the day who are no longer going to work for those organizations, and they have families to take care of and whatever. But they've just been so, and I'm not going to act like I'm holier than thou, because I did think that those two guys should be out of a job and or at least not working with the Vancouver Canucks anymore. Like, I guess I kind of contributed to that, but you do bring up a really good point that we shouldn't lose sight of.
Well, and look, in the real world, if we want to call it that, like, not that sports is play, but it kind of is, and we love that about it, right? That's why we work here, because we love it. But people get fired all the time. It's just,
they do.
You're not in the newspaper, you're not on Twitter being talked about when that happens, right? And so I think the public nature of the job is what's unique here. There's other, I guess, industries where that happens, but it's pretty unique to pro sports. And everything plays out in public. Like, if you're having a bad week at work, like, your immediate coworker might notice and say something to you, but like, usually it doesn't get too far. But if you're a player and you're having a bad couple weeks at work, everyone's like, why haven't you scored in 7 games? And like, it's that kind of pressure. I don't think most of us could truly understand, honestly, unless you've had something like that. Like, our jobs are somewhat front facing, and there's times in my career, especially when I was younger, I maybe put some of that pressure there, but like, it's not even remotely close. And, and I get like 1/10 of what they see. Like, some people yell at me, your voice, your hey, there's gray in your beard,
Stupid
whatever. Face. Like, yeah, like you get some of that, but it's not to anywhere near the level anyway. We're kind of getting off track.
You don't have a stupid
here.
Face.
Thank you, buddy. It's good to see your face.
It's good to see your face,
but
too.
I'll say that, we are getting off track, but I think that there's probably some relief in this for these guys too. I mean, as I say, this built up over a long period of time. Like that's like the least surprising firing I've seen in a while. I guess the Bergevin firing, was also not that surprising. We talked about it for weeks before it happened. In Philadelphia, it was pretty clear that Alain Vigneault was on the hot seat, and they lost 7-1 to Tampa on Sunday. So, it's not surprising he got fired, but I didn't wake up this morning thinking he would be fired. Whereas every day for about 3 weeks, it's like, okay, what's going on in Vancouver? So,
yeah, that's really true. We'll mention Marc Bergevin a little later on, as it seems as if there are some reports going around with him about a potential.
They're interested.
Yes, very much so.
I'm not sure how interested he is, though.
That's a good question.
Like, of course, if you're in his shoes, you're listening to everything. Like, he doesn't know. He can't just pick his next GM spot, right?
No.
Like, he doesn't know which teams will be interested. So you got to go through the process. But I think part of the appeal for him of leaving Montreal was just seeing a different. Like, the NHL is so different from league to city to city to city. Like, the experience of being a player in those cities or being an executive in this case. And if there is a market that kind of rivals Montreal for nuttiness, it's probably Vancouver. Like, literally, there's a lot of parallels. Obviously, you don't have the language situation where you have people coming at you in both languages, and there's a pretty healthy media presence here in Montreal as a result of that. But Vancouver is a tough market to work and play in. I mean, it's a beautiful city, but, they're a passionate fan base, and they've been eating crap for a little while here, basically.
Yeah,
so I don't know if that's going to be the right fit for him, but I think they'll explore it anyway.
Like, the one thing I'll just say about the Vancouver market, and that's just off of what I've been able to notice in the last year or so, just kind of getting to know more people who are from that market. It's just like, it's one thing to see a passionate fan base that's so knowledgeable about the teams there. You have fans who go in on some of the media people that are there, right? And like the battles that go on, they're
media
insane.
Versus media going on right now.
Crazy. I never knew it was. I mean, maybe to a certain extent that could happen here in Montreal, but like in Vancouver, it's nuts.
They're openly media warring, in words in their columns on Twitter. I mean, and I know a lot of these people. I'm friends with these people.
No beef.
I'm not picking sides or anything because I don't have to. I don't live there every day. I'm not participating in the zeitgeist around the team so much. But like, it's a very unique place, man, and I love it. Like, I actually do love it. I'm not saying any of this for the critical eye, but it's just. If you're a fan of the Jets and maybe you don't really pay attention much to Vancouver, like I'm just saying if you're listening to this from another media market, not really aware of it, like it's a wild place. And, that's why I wonder about the Sedins too. Cause like if anyone can maybe calm the waters around that, I mean, that's what they had with Trevor Linden, I think, for a period of time. Cause he was a franchise icon, really respected guy, smart, thoughtful guy.
Right.
He left obviously at a certain point. I think he kind of maybe saw where some of this was going and wasn't fully on board with the direction of the team, but the Sedins, I don't know if they're ready to be GMs. I mean, they're clearly going to have more of a role in this new front office than they did previously. I mean, but I think that they could help calm the market a little bit or just, who's going to go at them, really?
Yeah, they're like practically hockey royalty in that city.
Yes, and they're like two of the genuinely nicest people you could ever meet. They're smart, thoughtful, considerate, highly emotionally intelligent, and they had tremendous playing careers, so they know the sport. And they've a lot of Swedes, honestly, moved back to Sweden, former NHL players. Like very few Swedes stay here like that. They stay in Vancouver. They've made sizable donation to the hospital. They're choosing to raise their families here, obviously. There's some parallels, honestly, with Daniel Alfredsson. I think Daniel Alfredsson would be great in a leadership role at the Ottawa Senators. I just don't think that's happening as long as Eugene Melnyk owns the team.
That makes sense.
But to me, the first move, whenever Eugene Melnyk ceases to own this team, is to go and get Daniel Alfredsson on board and give him a meaningful role and let him be as involved as he can be. I mean, he's got 4 sons, I believe, so busy life at home. But, I think that would be huge for the Senators organization. I think that Sedins represent that for Vancouver, something similar. And I don't think it's impossible that we see them as in some sort of GMing type of role with a senior person above them, maybe who's called president or, titles. Titles are important because they're usually attached to the number of zeros on your contract. So
yes.
like the person getting the title cares about the title. those of us on the outside don't care about the title so much. It's more about the hierarchy. And I think someone more experienced above them and then maybe them doing the day-to-day running of the hockey team might be one of the avenues that this could go down.
So what about Bruce Boudreau as the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks? What do you think about him being put in that position? Or do you have any other insight on how long the Canucks might have been looking at him for that job or anything like that?
Well, I like the hire, actually. I guess you have to ask, like, what do you want out of this? Like, to me, Bruce Boudreau is a perfect coach to get a quick turnaround. He's very player-friendly. He's an excellent coach, frankly. If you look at his record, like what happened in Washington before and after he was there, Anaheim, same thing. Even, Minnesota's come on. Their team's changed a lot since he was there. I don't think that's necessarily, not to take anything away from Dean Evason, but it's not purely coaching necessarily.
Right.
Because, he didn't have Kirill Kaprizov and whatever. So, who, by the way, I watched the game on Saturday. Like,
that boy.
Like,
Woo.
they played a 3-on-3 overtime with the Leafs. Like, I didn't actually look up his ice time. I felt like they just left him out for, like, minutes at a time. And he was, I don't even know he got a shot on goal, but he was, every time you're like, you thought something was going to happen. Like, he's magic. It's great.
He's really good. Anyway.
I'm really not focusing well today. It's
Dude,
'cause I'm seeing you. All the feelings are coming out of my heart. It's like, can't organize the brain when the heart's getting all crazy.
Dude, after we record the podcast, we will have the love fest we intend on having. But, Bruce Boudreau.
So, I think he'll turn their season around to some degree. It's a lost season. And I guess what they're saying with this contract for this year, next year is next year they're going to try to be good. I mean, they're supposed to be good this year, right?
Yes.
Like, this is how they got here. It's not just because they lost a bunch of games. They lost a bunch of games after having a monster summer, making, eating some money, buying out a couple players, and the point was to challenge for the division. And they're challenging for the basement right now. So, I think that what I sense from this hiring, of course, then is that next year there's a lot riding on next year, that they want to be good again. And I do think Bruce Boudreau is the guy to do it. Like, I think another team, I'm sort of surprised he hung out there without a job for so long, relatively so long. I mean, I know he was doing some TV work and the like, but just because, to me, he can be someone to get a good team over the top. Because I think that highly of him. I know he hasn't won a Stanley Cup with a team, and he's had some playoff disappointments, sort of Game 7 losses and things, haunted that team with the Ducks. But man, he gets results. I think he's a very player friendly coach. I think he's going to do wonders for, like, Elias Pettersson, for example, because he's going to have them playing way more aggressively, and I think they'll be a more dynamic offensive team. And yeah, so I like the hiring. The fit is a little bit weird because, to me, you're almost like, shouldn't you be pulling this thing apart at studs? But, the owners aren't ready to do that. And it's their team, and they very much run it. Like, the fingerprints of the ownership is on this team more than some others. Some owners are way more passive. Some owners don't even live in the same city their team plays in. They just kind of let it happen, manage from afar. But the Aquilinis are quite involved, and they want to win.
Okay. There's still a few other thoughts I have on the Canucks. If Marc Bergevin isn't the GM for Vancouver, any other names we should be looking out for that job? Scott Mellenby's out there.
I could see the fit there. It seems like they're not in a rush for this job. Like, I think that they're very much, Stan Smeel is the acting GM, been around the organization a long time, even originally as a player. They have the Sedins there. Like, I think that they're going to run it by committee this year, is my sense, and maybe wait to see what else happens. I mean, I think Jim Rutherford would make a lot of sense, too.
Interesting.
But
he's a good GM.
Well, I think he'd be ideal in a president role. He's into his 70s now. Just couldn't have a better demeanor. Like, the man has seen everything.
Yes.
And
he's won.
Well, yeah, he's won a cup in Carolina and 2 in Pittsburgh. And not a lot of GMs ever win cups in multiple cities where they're the GM. It's hard to do that.
All post-lockout Stanley Cup wins, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And he's got a calming influence. Again, he's seen everything, so I think he'd be good to bounce ideas off of for whoever works under him. I know he wants to work. For sure he wants back in. And so Vancouver makes a ton of sense with him. At this point, I have got no reason to believe that, I don't think that they're not doing interviews yet, right? Like, we don't know. Remember, we have an opening in Anaheim, like an interim GM. We have an interim GM in Chicago and no vice president above him. So there's openings in 2 front offices. They're not doing interviews yet. I mean, this is going to be a very wild, I think, offseason for front office changes, because just the fact you have all those openings, you're going to have some kind of musical chairs going on. I would assume some of the people that fill those jobs are going to be today working in a different place. Now you have Marc Bergevin, recently available. John Chaika.
That's another name I thought about that. Yeah, a lot of people have brought his name up.
I do think, I'm not sure that he wants to be an NHL GM again. I'm not completely sure of that. I've had people suggest to me they see him, I think he might even have grander ambitions.
So he wants to be like a president?
Or maybe, get involved in other sports too.
Oh.
I actually think this is where sports are headed. I'm not saying the NHL is there yet, but where, if you're a great soccer executive, why can't you run an NBA team?
So basically like what Ralph Kruger did.
Yeah, but Ralph is a total outlier in the moment. I could see more of that happening because the skills you need overlap. Like the GM's job isn't necessarily to break down the game perfectly. I mean, obviously that's a skill set a lot of them have. There's so many GMs that are former players that understand the sport in their bones because it's what they've done their entire lives. But I think there's enough evidence in baseball in particular where if you're a manager of people, if you're on the cutting edge of sports science and analytics and how to run an organization, how to chase best practices, how to find that extra 1% of an advantage or something to tilt things in your favor, that you might not be able to have to diagram the perfect power play because you hire a coach who can do that.
That's it.
And you hire scouts or people that make evaluations on players. And, so I'm hoping out of this, Julian, this is not at all what you asked, but that we get to a spot where we see maybe some different types of people get these jobs. I just think it would be interesting. I also think it's a clear blind spot that the industry has or the sport is dealing with. And I'm not just talking about sex or race or anything like that. I even just mean people that have come from different places, education-wise or whatever. It's, yes, of course, there should be women in the front offices of these teams, and it doesn't presently exist.
Right.
You're seeing that in baseball. Again, I just think hockey is so far behind. So I'm not, I guess I'm saying a lot of change. I think there's a chance for a lot of change here because there's a lot of openings, and let's get after it.
I mean, the fact that a name, not to bring Montreal in this, but one person whose name I've kind of heard just kind of here and there in line for the Canadiens GM job, and I don't even know if they're actually in for an interview on it or how serious they would take her. But Emily Castonguay, the agent for Alexis Lafrenière, is a name that I've heard hey, why can't she go for that job? And Elliot mentioned the idea that, well, not just Elliot, but he was referencing the fact that Jeff Gordon mentioned the idea that the Canadiens could even possibly hire a player agent. I was thinking of her before Elliot mentioned Kent Hughes as an example. And that's also another area where NHL teams could look to go to for GMs, right? And not just some of the other guys who have been around different GMs. You've probably seen the video going around where these kids are all at a table and they have these water bottles and they're just kind of shooting them at different people, just passing them around the table. That's basically what the coaching and GM carousel is like. It's just the same guys getting passed around. So I like the idea of newer bodies and newer people and newer faces being introduced to these teams. So if it works for Vancouver, if it works for Montreal, if it works for Anaheim, that'd be really cool just to see.
Well, and you can do it especially if you have someone experienced there, right? You can hire Jim Rutherford, who is very much a traditional hire, who has worked other places, and then put someone new to learn under him. Like that, there's nothing that would work. And I think that's maybe what Montreal has a chance to do. I mean, Jeff Gordon is extremely experienced. He had a long career in Boston in their front office before having a long career in New York, before being the GM of the Rangers. He's been around the sport. And so, he's the experienced person now in this scenario. Why not Emily Castonguay? And I haven't asked her. I don't know if she would even want to do that.
I don't know either.
But if we're throwing a lot of names around, which especially in the Montreal job we are, I mean, what team is more incentivized to do it than Montreal because of the language issue, right? Because they're drawing from a different type of pool anyway. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in that too, to take some of these steps and to, every team is looking for that 1%, right? And one of the ways you get it is by obviously having people that see the world a little differently, that have different backgrounds, that have a different viewpoint on how to handle certain scenarios. And so, the time is coming. It is inevitable. I have no doubt about it. I just don't know if it's going to come in this round of of hirings, but probably should.
I mean, it's already come in forms of hockey media, too, in the way that, not to make this into an entire discussion on that, that could be a whole episode in itself, but we're already seeing it in terms of the platforms that we're using and the way, I mean, the fact that we have a podcast like this is part of that change, too. So it's only inevitable that the teams that we cover and we talk about essentially kind of fall in line and say, hey, you know what, like, you guys have to be adaptive to the new world that we're in, too. So, yeah, I think I'd be really pleasantly surprised and happy to see the Vancouver Canucks and the Canadiens or anyone else kind of go in a different direction as opposed to just getting like a typical hockey man getting it. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up doing that.
Right.
Anyway.
4 teams right now with like...
Pretty decent jobs.
Yeah, like that are making significant hires, like either GMs or presidents or whatever. But that's... And I'm not sure that that's the end. Like, I've heard there's still some more out there. Even coaching carousel might be swinging still.
Any names that you're willing to dole out now?
No, I'm not going to fire someone before they're fired. And because it's not solid enough information to really get any one fan base up in a tizzy. But certainly there's rumors swirling that even after the change in Philadelphia this morning, that there could be another head coach on the hot seat.
Perfect segue to the Philadelphia Flyers because I wanted to focus on them. Also, I want to give you props for the fact that instead of just kind of throwing out random names and being sensationalist about it, you were honest and you're just like, hey, like, it's not solid enough information. That's why I really respect doing the show with you because you're not afraid to just be like, yo, I don't have this information. It's not solid out there. So kudos to you for doing that. But I do want to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers and the fact that Alain Vigneault, the head coach over there, he is no longer the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. His assistant, Michel Therrien, again, the Montreal connections, both those two guys, right. Once upon a time were Canadiens head coaches. They are no longer part of the Philadelphia Flyers coaching staff. Mike Yeo is taking over in the interim, and this comes a couple of days after Chuck Fletcher. I think we briefly mentioned this on one of our episodes last week where he addressed the state of his team. And this team, as we're recording this podcast right now, is in the midst of an 8-game losing streak. So times are not great in Philly.
They're not great.
Nope.
And, something had to give there. This is a pricey one, too. I mean, if there's one thing with the Philadelphia Flyers, they're always willing to spend money to get out of a problem. Like, they gave a monster buyout to Ilya Bryzgalov after giving him a monster contract.
Humongous big
buyout. I love Briz.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more fun characters we've seen in the game. Yeah.
But, this is halfway through a $25 million coaching deal. So... much like the Toronto Maple Leafs had to eat Mike Babcock's salary at the time, that's what's going on. And I think it is a reflection, though, of the seat being pretty hot there for everyone. It doesn't sound like they're going to jump right into a big coaching search. To me, Rick Tocchet makes so much sense. I mean, the Flyers, and this is to their credit, actually, they're one of the organization, like, it really actually means something to be a Flyer. Like, it has like, attributes you can attach to it. It has
the identity. Yeah.
And it matters, and it's carried through the years, and it's carried over lots of different teams, and it's carried through times. I mean, they still haven't yet won a Stanley Cup since the 70s.
Yeah.
But they've been pretty close. They've been in the final a number of times since then and lost.
2010, I think, was the last time they were in the Stanley Cup final.
They were there in 87, too, against Edmonton.
Yes.
But, anyway, I think that who you hire, if that person is qualified and has those types of things, it's a bonus. And Rick Tocchet ticks the boxes. I know he's a really well-respected coach. I'm not sure we can look at his time in Arizona and really judge him because, a lot of different things going on there during his years. And
can we go into more detail on why Rick Tocchet is a good coach? Because I was always confused as to why he was getting these opportunities in different markets, right? Because he was in Arizona. He was on the Penguins staff as well. We know his history with the Philadelphia Flyers. I was always confused because it never seemed as if the teams he was a part of. Was he in Tampa? Am I wrong on that? I'm trying to remember. Maybe I forgot.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. But still, I'm just curious, why does he get these opportunities?
Well, what I've heard is he's just an excellent communicator with players, probably because of his background as a player. And that he can really, I know in Pittsburgh he got a lot of credit for dealing with Phil Kessel. And Phil is a bit of a complicated guy. I actually really like Phil. I dealt with him in Toronto for years, and I came to not just appreciate what he does on the ice, but to understand him a little better. But he's got to, for lack of a better term, he's got to be managed a little bit, right? And
Sure.
that was a big thing Rick Tocchet did. And the reason the Penguins won the first Stanley Cup 2016 was because they had three dynamic scoring lines. And the reason they had three dynamic scoring lines is because Phil Kessel was awesome.
Yes.
Along with Hagelin and Bonino. Bonino. And so, I think he deserves credit for that then, that the coach that helped keep Phil in the right places and the right frame of mind, I think he worked with him a lot. And so he is a good look. He went way down the road with Seattle.
Yeah.
Like he had 3 or 4 interviews in Seattle, which is usually if you're getting the 3rd or the 4th interview, it's because you're getting the job. And Seattle had 18 months to look at the whole crop, to consider all kinds of options. I mean, I know he's a hockey man, as you're saying, but I do think that there's a lot there to like. And so, as I say with Arizona, like look at the teams he was coaching, and just it hasn't been a stable environment. I actually believe they have a plan to try to make it a stable environment now, but there's some things beyond their control at the moment. But I think Tuukka makes tons of sense for Philly, but I don't know if they're going to go there because it sounds like Mike Yeo is like it's weird. They sort of announced it like he's coaching tonight's game, like as though we have no other choice. But then from more digging, it does sound like there's not a real rush here to go hire another replacement, and they might just kind of see how it goes for a time.
By the way, I'll say this about Rick Tocchet. It's not to denigrate his qualifications at all. I'm just genuinely curious because just from an outsider's perspective, it seems any market that I've seen him coach in, the team was not necessarily successful. And that's not me trying to dump on him. I'm generally...
Well, he did win the Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh.
Yes, in Pittsburgh, yes, as an assistant, not as a head coach.
But he was
part of the staff, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
he deserves that credit.
Like,
I'm just
we
curious.
don't get to see on a daily basis what all the assistant coaches do, but they're contributing. Like they all have specific jobs, and no team wins the cup without everyone pulling on the rope, man.
That is true.
So I that's why he got the opportunity in Arizona, because it went so well in Pittsburgh, and then they shook hands and he went his separate ways. But he'll be back, and it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being with the Flyers. It's just the timing's interesting, and look, he's on. I'm loving the TNT broadcast.
Yeah,
like,
I think he fits there.
Like they are killing it, and that's not. I'm not subtweeting anyone by saying like someone else isn't killing it, but I just find every time I see like one of their segments or like even the interviews they've done, like they're finding like a sweet spot there, and they're kind of goofy, but not for goofy's sake, and they're relaxing the players. Like I don't know if you saw that one they did with Austin Matthews. He was mic'd up in warm up,
right?
And and I think it was Rick Tocchet asked him what's his 3 favorite restaurants in Scottsdale, and Matthews is like whipping around the offensive zone. He's laughing,
yeah.
And then he listed 3 restaurants.
It was really good.
It was awesome, and I'm like, I hope that they spur more of that in the like. I think it's been great content. They had an interview with Sidney Crosby too. I don't know if you saw that one.
I haven't seen that one, no.
Sid's been interviewed roughly 1 billion times.
Yeah, and how many interviews can you look at and be like, okay, they were so great?
Well, no, look, I'm not being critical, but like they brought out some personality in them. They had him tell them stories. Anyway, so if Rick Tocchet stays on the TNT broadcast for a little while, I'm fine with that too, because I really like what they're doing.
What I was going to say is TNT is probably thinking of what they do on the NBA side, where they keep everyone loose and funny, and they have the characters that they have, not to mention they had Charles Barkley on a broadcast too, so that's probably what they're thinking. While ESPN, they can afford to be a little bit more like stoic and, not necessarily void of personality, because they definitely have personalities, but TNT, I think, is probably just trying to follow the blueprint that they set with the NBA. And if Rick Tocchet fits in that, that's fine. But
they don't take themselves too seriously. Like,
that's it.
That's what I like. And, we need more of that.
We do need more of that.
It's a long season, man.
Yes.
Like, not every game can be built up as this major game. Like, some games are just games, but there's still compelling reasons to want to watch and to see what, the personalities in those games. I mean, kudos. Like I am really impressed. I'm not watching every broadcast. I live up here in Canada. I'm busy. I'm at the rink a lot of nights myself, but whenever I can catch one of their broadcasts, like I'm doing it and then seeing the segments on my Twitter feed after.
What's up, people? It's Julian. Just want to take a little break in the action of this episode to tell you about BetMGM. If you are missing the biggest sports headlines from the night before and you're wondering how in the heck they're going to affect your bets, as I know there are a lot of people who like to bet nowadays. Sports betting is a very big thing. You guys have to check out BetMGM tonight, presented by BetMGM. It is a high-energy live destination for casual and hardcore sports fans alike. engaging, polarizing, relevant. You can get yourself caught up in the sports betting world with a heavy dose of entertainment. Quinton Mayo from NBC Sports Washington and Ryan Horvat from 1250 AM The Fan and Trista Crick as well. They're joined on site by some other correspondents to bring you some insider information in real time on what bets you should be making on whatever sport you want to do. Every detail matters when making bets, and BetMGM tonight dives deeper to help give you the edge. It's fun to bet on the game. It's even more fun when you've got the inside scoop. Tune in to BetMGM tonight, presented by BetMGM, and you can listen on Spotify, Odyssey, and any other of your favorite podcasting apps, because we know there are a ton out there. BetMGM tonight. Check it out.
Let me segue over to, I made mention of this when we were talking about the Canucks, but it also happened in Montreal too. The fact that there was this jersey throwing mini epidemic over 2 Canadian markets, and yes, it happened with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I completely forgot about that. What's your thoughts on fans doing that? Like I was talking about with Justin Cuthbert on the Iowa Sports Hockey podcast earlier this week, and he was saying that as ridiculous as it could be, it could kind of serve as a form of protest for the fan to really just show that, they've had enough with this team. And you could argue in the case of the Vancouver Canucks, at least, the method of protest was effective. Literally, like, after that game, Travis Green and Jim Benning no longer with the organization.
Well, because ownership can't ignore that.
Yeah.
Like, sports teams are a public trust, right? And when you start losing the public's trust, I mean, these are businesses.
That's true.
And if people are willing to spend $200 on a jersey and maybe more than that to get in the game and walk down to the ice and throw it on the ice, like, it is a pretty powerful statement, because you're just setting money on fire. And so, yeah, I'm not going to encourage people to do that, but I think it does. I think it makes a point, and it's a pretty strong one. And if you're a fan, what else can you do? I mean, you can go on Twitter and yell. That's what seems like a lot of people do. Vent your frustrations.
Yeah, a lot.
You can boo in a building. You can chant "Fire so and so."
Fire and brimstone.
I know, like, fire McKenzie, fire Johnston.
Those guys are bums.
But, you're sort of limited in the ways you can try to strike back. And so I don't mind. I do think it makes a point. And I don't know if you remember, this was a while ago, but one time someone threw an Eggo waffle.
I remember.
And Colby Armstrong, who's now become a buddy of mine, was on the Leafs at the time. And he had a quote in the paper, and he's like, "Get off your wallet and throw a steak if you really want to. Like spend some money and really make a point if you're gonna." Which I thought was a funny hockey player chirp, but
that's really funny.
Strange times.
It's really strange.
Do you know how weird that was? Eggo ended up putting out like a press release statement saying they had nothing to do with it, like they didn't support it.
Dude, that's so weird. Dude, I just want to talk about the Thursday night game because I took the photo of the Canadiens jersey that flew on the ice.
Yeah.
Like, I was shocked because I'd never seen that like in person.
No.
I thought I literally saw the jersey like float to the ice, and I literally yelled out like, "Oh my god!" Like, that's not something that happens. It's happened in Montreal apparently, but I've never seen that. I was shocked.
Well, I'm long past my jersey wearing years.
Yes.
For any sport.
Wait, really?
Oh yeah.
So you don't wear obviously. Wait.
I don't wear a Cowboys jersey, for example.
You don't wear a Blue Jays jersey?
No, I wear a hat.
Really?
I'm an adult.
Oh, whoa, okay. So this brings up a whole other discussion here. So when did you stop wearing jerseys of the teams that you like?
20 years ago, probably.
What? You stopped 20 years ago?
Yeah, basically my teenage years was probably the end of it.
What? I
do have a Tony Romo jersey, so I didn't wear that a lot, but that was in my 20s for sure.
What? Okay.
But I would wear that to if Pierre LeBrun, he's another big Cowboys fan. If I was going to his living room to watch a game, I might wear it. I didn't really wear it in public.
That's funny.
But yeah. Anyway, do you remember the feeling though of getting a jersey?
I mean,
when you were a kid, and maybe still today. But
yeah.
It's a pretty special thing. It's not even just the money. There's just something. It's like it's tying you to something. Anyway, my point is to ever think of getting that and then throwing it away. It's hard to. That's why it's a big deal. It's hard to imagine that.
I'm still cackling you with that. I'm an adult. I don't wear jerseys.
I don't do that, Julian.
I don't do that at all. No.
Although I did have a Tony Romo jersey.
Which is ridiculous. I don't have...
I love it, too, the white. I love the white Cowboys jerseys.
I'm not going to say anything because the NFL team I support, you know what? I'm not even
They've been taken out of the league, last I heard.
Okay, I'm not going to make myself more upset than I already am. I wish I had the patented grab bag with me because there are a few other things that kind of happened over in the last little while that I think we can kind of just do some quick hits on.
All right. Insert the jingle.
Whatever the grab bag jingle will be here, we'll come up with something, I'm sure. Someone, I'm sure, somewhere, either on Discord or in our respective DMs, will probably hit us up with potential music ideas.
Love it.
Yeah. So I just want a really quick thought on each of some of these different topics that have come up. So earlier today in Montreal, Dominic Ducharme saying that it's very unlikely that we'll see Carey Price in Montreal playing up until, it doesn't seem as if we're going to see him before Christmas. You don't have to tell me like, oh, where do you think he's going to come back? Because I think it's fruitless to kind of debate that. But just your thoughts on the fact that Carey Price still is not ready to play for the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, I can't help but think of it in Team Canada terms.
Yes.
That's like my first thought, and that's no disrespect to Montreal, but the season ain't going anywhere for the Habs.
No, it's not.
I would say, Carey, take your time from a Canadian standpoint. I mean, you say that anyway, given the serious nature of why he has been away from the team. But there's no real compelling reason to rush him back. But if you're Doug Armstrong or the Team Canada management, I think if he plays and if he tells you he's okay, you bring him. Like, I'm of that view. I know that's a little unusual because any other debate we have about players, I'm like, well, he had a bad 2 weeks. I don't know. but like in this case, I just think with some of the uncertainty at the position, everything he's done, what we just saw him do in the playoffs, I think you want him there. But yeah, that's kind of my thinking. The thing that we forget about Carey is, he was dealing with, off-season surgery prior to having to go into a treatment facility for substance use. So he wasn't even cleared to be skating and doing the regular activities when he had to, go and deal with the other issue. And so, when he came back, he hadn't skated then for another 30-odd days. And so, it's going to take some time. And the Canadians have time, but the Canada, I don't know. I don't know if he wants to be there too. I mean, it's a whole other issue. Remember, we had Robin Leonard today pulled out of the Olympics for Team Sweden.
Yep.
And that's because part of going to the Olympics is like you literally get there, surrender your phone, put on a tracking device, can't see your family. If you get COVID, you have to stay there for 3 weeks, maybe not get paid by your NHL team while you're doing so. Like there's big consequences for going. And so maybe we'll see other players fall in Robin Leonard's lead as well.
Okay, so that's also another topic we could always get into for a future episode. The next one I want to get to, in Boston, Tuukka Rask participating as an emergency backup goaltender for the Boston Bruins with Linus Ullmark out with a non-COVID illness. Do you think he's going to come back to Boston? I feel like it's inevitable it's going to happen.
Yeah. What I was told by his agent like a week or two ago, the plan is to play and to win. Something along those lines.
The plan is to play and to win?
Like, meaning, I'd asked him, where's he at? Because, he had a hip surgery in the offseason.
Yes, he did.
So he's been dealing with an extended recovery from that. And I do think at the time he had that, he wasn't certain for sure if he'd want to play, if he could play, what have you. And the mindset has switched now to like, yeah, he's coming back, and he's coming back in January probably. And he wants to play for Finland, actually, in Beijing.
Yes, he does.
And so I wouldn't be surprised to see him be back for the Olympics. And I expect it to be Boston. I mean, there's just such a good relationship there. He's been working out their facility. Even he's the EBUG today, but he's been in that facility for a number of weeks now, skating and using, the resources they have there. It makes sense. I know Jeremy Swayman's come on the scene. He's a young goaltender. They signed Ullmark, but I think you bring Tuukka Rask in if you can bring Tuukka Rask in at a number that makes sense cap-wise, and I'd be surprised if he ended up anywhere else.
Were you able to track all of the NHL Department of Player Safety updates with regards to the Leafs and Jets game on Sunday? Because there was a lot that went down in that, obviously, and I know you watched the game.
That was a rodeo.
That was very much a rodeo. Jason Spezza has an in-person hearing via Zoom over kneeing Neil Pionk, who need Rasmus Sandin, and he has a hearing for that. And on top of that, Wayne Simmons gets fined $2,250, the maximum allowable in the CBA, for cross-checking.
Yeah, so here's what I can tell you. Sandin, I'm hearing it's about 2 to 3 weeks for him that he's out. So that's good news, because I don't know where it was coming from, but someone in my Twitter feed was trying to suggest it was much more serious than that. But it sounds like they avoided a really serious injury there. And Sandin, for those that aren't watching the Leafs, is really having a breakout season. Like, he's been excellent for them. And so it's good news that that isn't a more serious issue because you didn't know. Like, you see him skating off with the help of his teammates. And that's where that game lost the plot because there was no penalty assessed on the play. So then Spezza, you can see him on the bench losing his mind. Jason Spezza is like, it's unbelievable. Second oldest forward in the league, the impact he's had on the Leafs. Like he's not just a figurehead. Like, he had 3 points in Minnesota on Saturday night and they came back from a 3-0 deficit. And I do think that there has to be some sticking up for teammates. Like, I'm not an ogre. I actually don't mind if fighting's out of the game, but I do think it's still a very aggressive, competitive sport, and part of that is defending teammates. It went wrong, and look, he's gonna.
It was a really bad hit that he did.
Yes, and I'm not going to defend that.
No,
and it's in person, so he can get 6 or more games. And to my knowledge, I don't know that he has any suspension history. Certainly not.
I was trying to find that today. I don't think he has.
Not any recent suspension history,
No.
for sure. I mean, he's had a long career, so there might be something that happened in the 2000s that I've just slipped my mind.
When you were wearing jerseys.
When I was wearing my Tony Romo jersey in LeBron's living room.
Yeah, sure.
Watching the defense fail Tony Romo over and over and over again.
We're in that time of year, too, where you would normally do that. But anyway,
no,
we're not
he
talking...
didn't fail. It was the defenses that always failed him.
Chris, this is the Chris Johnston Show where we talk about hockey. If you want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys failing in November and December, we can do another episode
in this
of that.
house, we talk Cowboys. We talk Bitcoin. We talk whatever.
Last
I
checked, Concordia's my alma mater, not yours.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, you're flexing here, bud.
A little bit here. So
right.
Yeah, let's talk more about Jason Spezza and the lack of his suspension history.
Right. Well, look, he's going to get dinged here. I think he deserves to get dinged. Pionk's going to get something a little bit less. I know the Jets have an angle on that hit where they feel that it shows, it's not as bad. Because look, the game is so fast. I think that's the one thing. It's hard to judge intent, right? The reason Jason Spezza is going to get hit really hard here is, that was a bad hit, but there's clear intent in that play. He's mad on the bench. He comes on the ice, and that happens. The problem with Pionk, in a sense, there's nothing that I recall in the play before that really suggests he was trying to do something dirty to Rasmus Sandin. I think it just a hit that had bad consequences. So intent is always something that the Department of Player Safety is working through, and when it's a retaliatory play like it was for Spezza, it's pretty clear what he was trying to do.
And the last thing, Blake Wheeler also playing his 1,000th NHL game. That also got lost in all of that as well, among other things that got lost in that game. But you ever dealt with Blake Wheeler?
Oh, yeah.
Nice guy?
Nice guy. He can be edgy in the good way.
Okay.
Too. I actually find him very honest.
Okay.
But he's not afraid to... In the old days when we could stand face-to-face and have more interaction...
I miss those days.
He's not afraid to stare down a question or to if he doesn't like where you're going with it. And I don't have a specific... he and I don't recall that he and I've just seen it with him being around him.
Right.
But I think he's a really stand-up person, and 1,000 games, man. It's harder and harder to do that in the league.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was looking up Spezza because he's 38, second oldest forward in the league. Only Joe Thornton is older.
Yeah.
And, I think fourth or fifth oldest player total. My point is, there was a time, kiddies, gather round. Uncle CJ will tell you a story about a time when guys played routinely into 35 or whatever, and that really just doesn't happen in the league now. You get to 30, the clock's starting on you unless you're Superman like Alex Ovechkin, who just scores every game at 36 and just is yeah, no big deal.
Are you actually an uncle?
I'm a many times uncle. Yep.
Okay, good. Just checking.
I have 5 nieces and nephews.
Oh.
On my side and 2 on the other.
Okay, that's cool. So you could literally be like Unky CJ. Yeah,
no one's calling me Unky CJ, but it's funny. Saturday night we were down in Coburg and we took in. They did for the first time ever under the lights, the Santa Claus parade, and my sister and her 2 kids were there, and the kids were jacked up for the Santa Claus parade. That was pretty cool. And then got to wrestle with my nephew Henry afterwards. So that was a, all the changes in my life work wise, that's something I could never have done because I was always tied up on a Saturday. So it was actually kind of cool to. I'm trying to appreciate those moments that I'm getting now because I have a little more flexibility in my schedule.
I appreciate that wholesome moment. Let's get to some of these questions from the fans up on Twitter and on Discord as well.
This is relevant since it's a hockey podcast.
Of course.
So my nephew Henry's 6. He lives in Ottawa, big Senators fan.
Okay.
Big.
Yeah.
My dad, Ian, lives in Coburg and is a big Leafs fan.
Papa, CJ.
Papa, got the mug from the show.
Yes, sir.
And Henry loves ragging on the Leafs. And so he went to bed on Saturday night when it was 3-0 Wild. And when the Wild scored the third goal, he just goes, Papa. Like, he just loves giving it to him. And then, so the Leafs come back and tie it 3-3. And my dad's like, they better win this game because I'm making him watch the highlights in the morning. Like, he's going to understand that he stirred something in the world. But the Leafs end up losing in the shootout. Anyway, it's just funny. Like,
That's a good story.
6 years old and he's already just gives it to my dad. Like, he hates the Leafs. And I don't really know. I mean, his dad, my brother-in-law Alex, like, I think he's instilled it in him too. He's a Senators fan, goes to a lot of games and stuff. But like, they rag on my dad good.
That's really good. The first question I'll ask you for the Ask CJ segment. Thank you to everyone who chimed in on Twitter and on Discord. If you want to take part in the SDPN Discord, go on the SDPN website and click on the Discord logo. That way, at least over 8,300 people are part of that Discord. That's a pretty big community as far as I'm concerned.
We appreciate you.
We appreciate you all very much. This one's from Hannah Mej on Twitter. A question for the pod. When players go on COVID protocol, do they still count against the cap? What if a team is too tight against the cap to call up replacements from the American Hockey League? At what point is an organization officially deemed unable to ice a team?
I mean, that's really what it all comes down to. So yes, players do count on the cap. If you want to call it fortunate, and I'm just meaning from a team management standpoint, when Ottawa, for example, had its issue and they had 10 players, I think, at the peak, they're not near the cap ceiling, so they had the ability to keep calling guys up. I mean, obviously they had competitive issues because they're not calling up NHL players in that case, or quality NHL players. But you know, if a team that's right against the cap has 5 or 6 players, I mean, they're going to have to play short for a game, and then you can have emergency recalls. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's always what I don't know if there's a magic number. I think we've seen teams play with as few as 15 skaters in the cap era due to these kind of issues, not COVID specific. And Calgary Flames a few years ago just ran into a crazy amount of injuries and didn't have an ability to do anything about it. So yes, you'll see teams play short because of that. We're seeing a lot of goaltending issues now around the league because goalies are getting injured, or a couple of goalies have been put on the COVID protocol list. The EBUGs are not. It's not as rare. It's like every night there's someone potentially one shot away, one heartbeat away from getting in a game.
Be you David Ayers,
yeah,
or Scott Foster.
But so yeah, that's a huge issue right now for teams, and it's just inevitable we're going to see someone play shorthanded just because there's 16 teams right now that are using LTIR, that are above the cap.
From Leafy TV for the next question on Twitter. Hey, they actually put a crown. That's for you, King CJ. Right. Any update on Jeff Carter's middle name? Sorry to keep asking, but you did say you'd find out, and I've been on the edge of my seat since. Love the content from you and Julian.
Thank you for the crown.
Appreciate it.
And I'm sorry, I have not. I will follow up on this. I'm gonna put in a reminder on my phone, and I'm gonna actually figure that out.
Okay, we'll figure that out. And when we do pomp and celebration and all that, when we figure out what in the hell Jeff Carter's middle name is.
And I love you people out here just worried about stuff like this.
What is that?
You don't want to just hear about why someone was fired or who's getting traded. You want to know. You want to really dig into the details of this league.
Here's something else people have also wanted to know, CJ. This is from Sterling Cooper Draper Price on Discord. Where does Chris get these bear hats he's been wearing for the last few episodes?
North Standard Trading Post. It's a local shop in Toronto. And I believe it's a husband and wife that design the clothing, that throw the bears on everything. I love their stuff and love repping local. So you can get it online.
All right. It looks like
they got an Instagram.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I'm just saying, this is just literally, I buy their stuff because I like it. I got some T-shirts and stuff too.
Okay. I got to get me one of those hats because the one you're actually wearing right now, it's been on camera a couple times.
I know,
I'm
it's
sure.
my favorite hat. I know I wear it too much, but...
Who cares? It's your hat.
Well, I'm also in Montreal, and it's raining and crappy out.
It's pretty miserable weather.
I needed a hat today. This was not a day to try to have good hair.
I'm going to get to a few more here while we still have some time. What is the Olympics backup plan if the NHL backs out at the 11th hour? No hockey? I can't imagine a plan B Spengler roster if those guys had to go through proper drug testing. This is from Ian McIntosh 14 on Twitter.
Ian, there will be hockey. I would be stunned if there wasn't hockey at the Olympics. There'll be hockey in the Olympics. Basically, teams submitted, or countries submitted the long list of 55 NHL players, but there's a secondary list or a different list with other European-based players who are being drug tested. It's one of the main reasons Canada is sending a team to both the Spengler Cup and I believe the Channel 1 Cup it's called in Russia. Basically to get a look at these guys, to get them in-house in case they have to be, thrown into battle on pretty short notice. And
Essentially.
So there will be a men's Olympic tournament, even if there aren't NHL players there.
From Craig CMAX73 on Twitter, when will the NHL go to a 10-minute 3-on-3 OT? Because the shootout is a horrible way to end a great hockey game.
Couldn't agree more. This has come up at the past GM's meetings. I think there's concerns about playing players too much, because only typically like your rotation is maybe 6 players deep in a 3-on-3 or 9 players deep, I guess, for a team, like 3 changes. But a lot of, you're not playing your whole roster too often in overtime. And so I think there's concern about overplaying the top players in that scenario, but I'm with you. I love 3-on-3. Any 2 teams, if I find they're in 3-on-3 and I'm at home, I'm calling it up because chaos usually is abound.
Oh, for sure. Alrighty, boys, from Bootmaster Ben on Discord. If a movie was ever made about you, which actor would you choose to play you? I have my answer.
Who's your answer?
Donald Glover. I don't know if you ever watched Community.
I did.
Big Donald Glover fan. I would want Donald Glover to play me. Absolutely. And I think it would work.
Huh.
Yeah.
I've never thought about this.
Yeah. Really?
No. Like, I don't have an answer teed up. Like, I could give Steve Buscemi.
The size, maybe the voice too. And I totally see you pulling up somewhere with like the backward skateboard.
That's
like,
what I was thinking.
Hey, how do you do, fellow kids?
That's how I feel right now in a university. Like I'm like,
that's true.
So maybe that's why that meme like popped into my head because we're here at Concordia and that's how I felt walking through the building.
No shade to Steve though. I think you're a little bit more handsome than Steve.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to hear what the people think.
That's fair.
Let me know on Discord. Who should be playing me?
Let me know on Discord.
Don't be too harsh though.
Let us know in the comment section as well who should be playing CJ in the feature film about his life, which is about being a hockey insider, being positive, going through changes ahead of their 40th birthday. There are so many different plot lines you can get to in a movie about Chris Johnston's life.
That wasn't just about turning 40, bud. I didn't have a thing about turning 40.
I know, but
it was more about the pandemic giving an opportunity to like put some new habits in.
I mean, yes, but also like, you know how some movies based on certain things that have happened like to kind of mess with some of the plot lines. The pandemic would obviously be in there, but you could also make the big deal about the 40.
Okay.
I've basically signed up to be the executive producer on the movie On Your Life.
All right, Donald.
Donald Glover, obviously, is the Donald that he's referencing. And that's going to do it for this Monday edition of the Chris Johnston Show.
Oh, man, that was fun.
Man.
That was fun.
Every show I do with you is fun, especially when we get to do it in person.
Let's go have a beer.
Let's go have a beer.
Just because we can do that. We can never finish a show and have a coffee or a beer, but we can today.
You can even devour wings if you so choose.
I will abstain from the wings today.
That's very fair. I think the place we're going to doesn't even have wings. Do they have wings? I've never gone there for wings. Anyway, by the way, I got to give a big shout out to AJ Cordero and Concordia University for just allowing us to be able to use the studio. And AJ, if you're wondering, Burgundy Lion, they have wings apparently. I've never had wings at Burgundy Lion. That's it. You don't really go for the wings.
I'm going for a beer.
Okay, let's go for some beers. While everyone else at home, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the SDPN YouTube page. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Agent Provocateur coming out on Tuesday. I don't have a guest to spoil, unfortunately, so I guess you're just going to have to watch the podcast just to figure that out. And, of course, the Steve Dangle podcast as well. Oh, there's an announcement coming for the Game Over podcast later this week, hosted by Andrew Berkshire. And I think if you like hockey, you'll like this.
I like it.
Yeah,
he's had a great guess. Like he's working hard in the corners to line up all the best of hockey Twitter, basically.
Basically, I just hope. I almost spoiled something about that. Actually, I'm just going to stop myself from there. For CJ, I'm Julian saying so long and peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.